So I finished off the base plate from the last video by adding in all of the necessary fillets into the sharp corners and then adding in the rule fillet to the top and bottom face of this particular part. What I now want to do is create a copy of this and have it sat 50mm below this one to create the top and bottom parts of our core that we can connect each of the hexapod legs into. And the way to do that is to move away from the base plate being the active component to the top level now being the active component. So move to the top level in the browser, click on the activate component button, and that now activates the top level assembly. I can now hover over the base plate, and if I right click it brings up a menu where I've got a copy command, or Control C if you prefer, and then if I right click again I can now do a paste or Control V. Now it looks like not a lot's happened, although in the browser you'll see there is a base plate 1 and a base plate 2, and the reason for that is it's actually copied the new part directly on top of the old one. And what I can do is actually grab on this arrow now and push this new part away from the old one. So I'm pushing it down minus 50mm because I want 50mm spacing between these two parts. So if I now click OK, I've now created two base plates that I think are 50mm apart. But all I'm going to do is check on that. So I'm going to go to the inspect menu here and pick on this measure command. And what I can actually do is click on that face and then rotate around and click on this face, and it will tell me the distance between the two, which is in this case is now telling me it's 45mm and not the 50mm I was looking for. And the reason for that is it's not actually taking into account the thickness of this material that we got. So I need to move this base plate down. So if I right click over the base plate in the browser, choose the move command, pick on this vertical arrow, and I can drive it down another 5mm. I can now go back to the inspect menu, choose the measure tool again, click on this face at the bottom, click on the face, the underside face of the top, and it's now telling me that's 50mm. So that's now the correct spacing. So that's an introduction into this measure command in the inspect menu that allows you to measure things and check things are in the right relationship to each other as you go along. So what I want to do now is create a central core for this particular assembly. So I'm going to create a spacer to actually fix these two parts onto so that they'll actually be connected to each other. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to create a new component that I'm going to call the core. So create new component and then call it core. And once I click on OK, then that appears in the browser, and it also makes it now the active component. So what I can do now is click on the sketch menu and go to create sketch, and what I can do now is I can actually create the sketch on that top face of that bottom base plate. So as I move over it, you see it lights up to show you that that's actually going to be the sketch plane that we're going to use. So click on that, just capture position there, and then I'm going to create a center diameter circle that is actually 70mm in diameter, and then stop sketch. I'm then going to take that cylinder profile and go create, extrude, and start to actually lift that profile up. So I'm actually going to start extruding that into a cylinder shape, and I want it to finish on the underside of this plate. Now I could type in 50mm because I now know these two are 50mm apart, but I could also just actually click on that face there and it will actually finish that cylinder exactly 50mm above the plane where the sketch was, and you'll see there it's 50. That's a double check that that's correct. So now click on OK. And the one thing I want to do now, this is a completely solid cylinder. Let me just isolate and take away from the view the base plates. This is a solid block cylinder. I actually want it to be a hollow cylinder, and the way to do that is under the modify menu there is a command called shell. If I click on shell, it's going to make this a hollow body. So if I now click, and to make sure I click the right thing, I'm going to expand the browser and click on body 1, and I'm going to make this a 2mm wall thickness. click on OK, the part now doesn't look any different to the part we just had on the screen. But again, if I go to the inspect menu, I can look in this thing called section analysis, and if I actually put the origin on and click on that, you can see that this is a hollow box now. It's actually a hollow cylinder. So, and this is a 2mm wall thickness, so that's actually made this a hollow cylinder, but it's a complete cylinder shape. The top and bottom are still there. So that's one way of actually doing a shell. The other way of doing a shell is if I go to modify and click on shell, if I click on that top face and then I click on this underside face and then click on 2mm, it's now taken those faces away and created a 2mm wall thickness for what's left. So that's now like an open pipe. I'm just going to undo that and go back and just shell this again in the original way that I did, which is shell, click on the body, make this 2mm, click on OK, and that's now a hollow shell. I'm now going to bring my base plates back into play, and the last thing I'm going to do is change the material again. So I'm actually going to right click on it, and the physical material options also under the body as well, so click on physical material, and I'm also going to make that ABS plastic as well. So that's now created the central core of our hexapod with 3 components, one base plate that we've copied, and then a central core to act as a spacer between the two. We're now going to move on to the next video and start creating the individual legs to plug into this core, and we're going to do those as separate sub-assemblies.